Hi, welcome to today's show. We are gonna be learning how to make Italian meatballs today. Mine gonna be a little bit different than what you normally see at other places. We're gonna start out with, in here I have 1-to-1 of pork and ground beef, and usually the ratio is 30% of bread to meat. Okay? The reason why mine is a little bit different than most of the meatballs you see or ate before is I add Parmesan cheese in there. You can add all the cheeses you want, like provolone if it's a little bit cheaper than Parmesan, or you can do a mixture of it, but it really adds that nice umami saltiness flavor to that, and it makes your meatball a little bit more moist because of the cheese in there. Okay, I have 3 different kinds of herbs in here. I have parsley, basil, and oregano, garlic, salt and pepper, egg, and a little bit of you can add that if you don't want to, that's fine. Fennel seeds, toasted fennel seeds and lightly grinded. I'm not gonna add it in here. I want to keep it a little bit more. I want the cheese to really stand out a little bit, and you can add a little bit of chili flakes if you want a little bit spicier, but this is mine right here. The cheese really brings it out. You're gonna use a lot more cheese than you think. What I have in here, roughly maybe, I don't know, 1/4 cup to 1/2 cup of cheese. Okay, or you can use provolone or something more like Italian cheese, a little bit more sharp. Cheddar cheese might be fine too, but if you're gonna use that, use sharp cheese. Okay, not mild, right? Since we are doing Italian food today, I thought I might drink some red wine instead of rosé. So we're gonna get started here. Don't worry about this onion. I also gonna crack 1 egg in here. And for the bread, you can use a rustic bread. I like to use fresh bread instead of breadcrumbs, because with breadcrumbs, you have to soak with a lot of water, or you can do milk. I just like the texture of like that whole bread inside. It makes it a little bit softer instead of like a little bit of that graininess. If you're gonna buy bread that has really thick crust, you might want to cut it off and only use the inside. I have here is the French baguette. It's a little bit thinner, so it's a little bit hard to get the the bread inside for the volume. So I soak it up a little bit more water on the outside, so that way to make it a little bit more wet and moist. Another way you can do that, cut into chunks, put it in your food processor if you have it, and then just run it until it's a little bit more fine, so that way it breaks up the crust a little bit more. But you know, if you soak it long enough and really mush it with your hand, it shouldn't be a problem. Okay, so now you just go in here and mix it. If you have the money and you don't need to be cheap, you can do 1-to-1-to-1 of veal, beef, and pork, and that is the best meatball you will ever get. Okay. You can already smell the herbs in here, so fresh herb in here is super important. Okay. Don't use dry herbs. I try not to use dry herbs unless if in Cajun food they tend to call for dry thyme, but other than that, I always use fresh herbs. And you don't want to work this too much, because then your meatball can be really tough. Just until it's all nice, comes together like that. Okay, and whichever size you want. You can do a giant meatball if you want, or you can do a smaller one. Okay. I'm gonna do about this, I say about a golf ball size. Okay. If I get too lazy, I will make like a really giant one. But then it's gonna change your cooking time because it's bigger. It will take longer to cook. This will take about half an hour to cook as opposed to something bigger. And then sometimes, you know, the more I do this towards the end, it might get a little bit bigger because I get lazy. Okay, so now I got all my balls already formed. This is best to do half an hour before you're gonna cook it, or the night before. It's just much easier to handle them cooking wise, so that way they firm up overnight, and all the cheese got a lot colder, so that way when you sear it, it doesn't get melted too quickly or leak out of the meatballs. But of course, because I'm teaching class, so I'm gonna be cooking it right away after I form them. But next time, just form this the night before, let it sit the next day, then you can sear it off. Or you can just make this like that, freeze it IQF, pretty much just like this. And then but with a piece of plastic wrap on the bottom, so when it's completely frozen, you can lift up the plastic wrap and separate them. So now you have meatballs already all ready to go. The reason why I don't like to bake my meatballs instead of searing them first, there are many different reasons why. First of all, your meatball is not going to be dry baking up in the oven. Second of all, you also build another layer of flavors. You caramelize it on the outside because there's cheese and stuff like that. It really helps to enhance that flavor. Kind of like when you're making beef stew or some sort of stew, you sear the meat, is you build that layer of flavor, that caramelization. Okay, I'm sorry, sweetie, it's right hot right now. Okay, I don't think you want to be right here. I know. Okay. You can do with canola oil, olive oil, but if you're gonna do olive oil, you know, turn your heat down a little bit. Using a cast iron pan is a perfect thing to do for this one, or anything that is non-stick. Stainless steel works great too. Okay. And screw your pan is hot, so that way it sears the outside immediately. Prevents your cheese from leaking out. Okay, and you're not cooking this all the way. You just want to get nice here on two sides. Then you're gonna put it in a pan. Either you can braise it on the stove or in the oven. Okay, so and then the second thing I'm gonna show you guys is this is my master sauce. This is my master tomato sauce, and this is the tomatoes that I like to use. You don't want to crowd the pan too much either. That way it's a little bit harder for you to flip it. Okay, I got a pan ready right here. I'm gonna turn my heat up a little bit because I already preheated my pan. So now I just want it to keep the temperature. But once you drop like cold stuff, too much things in there, of course the temperature of your pan is gonna drop dramatically, even though you already preheated your pan for a long time. Okay. Look how nice and clear that is. Okay. Some people will argue with you saying that braising your meatball will help. Braising the meatballs without searing it will help to hold the shape of your meatballs better. That is true. But you're not building layers of flavors in there. Okay? Same thing with just throwing it in the oven. You can if you want to. If you don't want to do the, deal with the mess of doing the oil splattering everywhere and the extra pan dirty and all that, sure, go ahead. It's still gonna taste great because there'll be cheese in it, but I would recommend doing very high heat too. That way your cheese doesn't seal or leak out too much. Okay. And you should have a pan already ready to go. Whichever pan that you're using to braise it in, you don't have to use a pot. You can use one of those, casserole pan, and then get your sauce ready, dump it in there, cover it with the foil, and pop it in the oven. And if that's how you want to bake it, but make sure you cover it though, because if you don't cover it, your tomato sauce will burn. But if you do it on the stove, you don't have to do that, okay? So one more thing I want to give you guys as a tip. So like earlier I was talking about the bread for this. I don't really like I said, I don't really like using those dry breadcrumbs because they are way too fine. I like to have a little bit more texture. I like using fresh bread instead. But here's the thing, if you don't want to go out and buy a piece, like a local bread or something, if you have something else at home, you can certainly use, like let's just say crackers. Once you soak in water, it will become somewhat kind of like, that pasty bread. It's similar to like breadcrumbs, the dry breadcrumbs that you buy at the store. What is it? Just completely dry bread. Crackers, it's almost the same thing. So don't think too much of, I want people to think further than just using that exact same ingredient when you buy, that you need to go to the store to buy it. Sometimes you don't have to. Just use whatever you have at home. Use some similar products, Crackers is great. But these, a different bread is fine if you have it. Honestly, pretzel might even be good in there too to soak it a little bit longer. Yeah, I mean, some people I know might even use potato chips as some sort of starch in there. Just use your imagination a little bit. I have worked with this chef. He was my first chef ever, and I have learned so much from him of using things with ingredients that you don't have, that you have that similar to it, so that way you're not spending too much money or too much time of looking around buying for that one ingredient just for that one recipe. Okay, so now I'm going to use some of this sauce in here.
I know, buddy, it looks good, huh? No, hey!
Not too much, just enough as your liquid to braise it, okay? That's it. And then I'm going to have this on. And the more you cook too, some of the meat will leak out a little bit of the liquid as well. But that's pretty much just letting it cook about 20 to 25 minutes until the meat is completely done. Then that is done.